Malcolm Chisholm, the first Australian to fall in World War I, was one of the many men with ties to the Upper Murray who did not return from the Great War to once again hear the call of the high country, the country in which he had spent time as a young man and where much of his family lived. Malcolm only saw 4 days in action before he was wounded in the stomach on 26th of August 1914. He died the following day in the church in Ligny-en-Cambrésis, which had been converted into a military hospital. The Germans buried him with full military honours and returned his watch to his family. Malcolm did not live long enough to hear the words Gallipoli, Anzac and the Western Front. At the time of Malcolm's death, nobody was to know that he would be the first of over 60,000 Australians to fall in the Great War, and was one of 8,000 Allied troops to die in the Battle of Le Cateau. Malcolm's mother Emma Isabel grew up on Bringenbrong Station in the Murray Valley. It was to his Aunt Frances and Uncle Jack at Cancoban Station that Malcolm and his younger brother Colin were sent for their school holidays from Sydney Grammar School. From Cancoban Station, the Chisholm boys visited their Aunt Winifred and her husband Walter Mitchell, who lived on the Victorian side of the Murray River at Towong Hill. By all accounts, Malcolm was a hard worker for his exacting uncle and well liked by his maternal relatives and all who knew him in the Upper Murray. Having decided on a military career before Australia's Royal Military College at Duntroon opened in 1911, like many of his contemporaries, Malcolm completed his military training at the Royal Military College Sandhurst and then joined the 1st Battalion of the Lancashire Regiment. For this reason, his death on the 27th of August 1914 was not reported in the Corryong Courier until 5th of November 1914.
To Dr. W. Chisholm, 25 Harrington Gardens. The King and Queen deeply regret the loss you and the Army have sustained by the death of your son in the service of his country. Their Majesties truly sympathise with you in your sorrow. Signed, Private Secretary.
When the Corryong War Memorial was unveiled in 1926, his name was not included. Malcolm was not a Corryong man, and Cancoban Township didn't exist until after the Second World War. Few people see the brass plaque that once commemorated the Malcolm Chisholm bequest by his uncle John Mitchell in Corryong Hospital. The Malcolm Chisholm ward no longer exists, and the plaque has been placed on the wall in a hospital waiting room. Lastly, Malcolm's name was not added to the Cancoban Great War Honour Board until the centennial commemorations of the beginning of the Great War in 2014. Malcolm's story was forgotten for many years, except by some of the descendants of his relatives. Everything changed, however, when artist George Petrou painted his portrait in 2022. The story began when George painted a portrait of Banjo Paterson to include in an exhibition of 12 prominent Australians. After the 2020 bushfires, George donated his portrait of Banjo Paterson to the Man from Snowy River Bush Festival to auction to raise money to help replace equipment destroyed in the fires. The problem was that the COVID-19 pandemic intervened and the portrait could not be auctioned. The Bush Festival agreed to buy the portrait, and George, who had only just discovered that Malcolm had an Upper Murray connection, generously suggested that he would sweeten the deal by throwing in a high-quality print of Malcolm for a substantial discount. The festival soon realised that the portrait of Malcolm would find its place in the Corryong RSL Hall.
I was speaking to a former curator of the Sir John Monash Centre in Villers-Brett, and she was in this meeting and we were talking about some of the stories in my book, and she's mentioned to me, do you know the name William Chisholm? I said, no, I don't. And she said, he was the first Australian to die during the First World War. So I asked her to send me some more details, but yeah, that was really enticed me to sort of want to paint the portrait. I'd met Honor many years ago, perhaps 2015, and she has a wonderful knowledge of military history, and I thought I might get her on this one. I said, I'm going to ring her up and just ask if she knows the name William Chisholm. And her reaction was, oh God, yes. You mean Malcolm? I said, no, I mean William Chisholm. No, Malcolm was his middle name. We referred to him as Malcolm. I'm going, here we go, she knows him. And then she tells me, oh, Malcolm was my father's first cousin. So, and they were very close, apparently. He was really brokenhearted when he died. They were so close. They were like brothers, apparently.
Demonstrating the growing awareness of importance of heritage in the community, the portrait was displayed as part of the centrepiece of the art and photography exhibition at the Man from Snowy River Bush Festival. By Anzac Day 2023, Malcolm's story was picking up momentum, and Greg Nankervis told it at the Anzac Day service in Corryong.
Today there's a special event happening here in Corryong and in a small village in northern France. Malcolm Chisholm was the first Australian to fall in World War I. His mother was Emma Isabel Mitchell from Bringambrong, and his aunts and uncles lived at the Cancoban Station and at Tawong Hill. After 4 days in action during the Battle of Le Cateau, Malcolm was mortally wounded and died on the 27th of August 1914. He was never to know that he would be the first of over 60,000 Australians to die during the First World War.
George's philanthropic efforts were already reaching across the world as he began to make arrangements to donate the original portrait of Malcolm to Monsieur Charles Delay, president of Anzac Commemorative in France. George was finding that he was taking more than just the portrait to the town where Malcolm lies, but that he would be exchanging Malcolm's Upper Murray story with that of the Chisholm story in Ligny-en-Combrasis. There, amid rich Gallic commemorative traditions, George and the descendants of Malcolm's immediate family learned what Malcolm's story means to the community in which he lies.
We were blown away. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe 20 people, a few dignitaries, maybe the mayor and a few members of the association would be there. There was a beautiful morning. We're looking around and we're saying, why are all these people here? I think I counted maybe 30 flag bearers. There were members of there was a member of the Australian Army there, the French police, the French military, all the local councillors were there. I just couldn't believe it. And I would say there was about between 100 and 200 people there. They commemorate his passing every year, which is incredible.
I think it was a terrific initiative, and I think it's very well remembered there. I don't actually know of other families who have done something similar. I mean, the Chisholms, they were able to afford to do it, which many families, of course, weren't. And maybe they also felt that they were doing something for others that others were unable to do. And they knew that the war had actually come right to the doorstep in Ligny-en-Combrasis and even into their homes and their houses, and they would have sustained terrific losses in their families and their properties and their farms, and the community was devastated. And they had to endure German occupation till the end of the war. I think it was October 1918 when the Germans left, and they didn't even have enough to eat. So I think that the Chisholms probably realised that it helped them to help others, and that to see people who are suffering more and to be able to help them actually helps you through your own grief.
As the Chisholm's rising star, Malcolm left behind a grief-stricken family. His mother's sadness was so profound that she asked for her ashes to be interred in a tomb just opposite the Commonwealth War Graves Commission's plot as her final resting place. She was the first of some 60,000 other Australian mothers to experience such ghastly and unprecedented grief. In 1919, when Malcolm's younger brother Colin had recovered sufficiently from injuries sustained at Ypres, the family returned to Sydney, as with the outbreak of the war, Dr. William Chisholm, Malcolm's father, had given up his practice in Macquarie Street to become an army doctor based in London. With the death of his uncle John Mitchell in 1922, Colin took up Malcolm's inheritance and moved to Cancoban Station. With a street and primary school named in Malcolm's memory, it seems that for many years Malcolm was better remembered in Ligny-en-Cambrésis than in the Upper Murray. That is until now, with art playing a vital role in establishing the links between the Upper Murray and Ligny-en-Cambrésis permanently.
It's just an incredible story, as sad as what it is, but to have that link to the Upper Murray is huge for us, and of course the overseas connection and stuff like that. Such a huge story for such a small town. Something really important and special for our community.
I don't think I've ever heard of an artist who has linked towns in the way that that George has linked Ligny-en-Cambrésis and well, not just Corryong, but the Upper Murray, and it opens up all kinds of possibilities of bringing two communities together.
Yeah, look, I guess it's pretty amazing when you think that this town, sort of in the middle of nowhere, has named the main street in William's honour. They've named the school in his honour, and they commemorate his passing on the 27th of August each year. I think that speaks volumes for the town and the respect they have for the Australians. And everyone has a story, whether they're VC recipients or just privates. Everyone was affected, and for generations. And it wasn't only the soldier; it was the family back home. The wife, the children, they were all affected, and I say the following generation as well.
The call of the high country is a phrase known to many. It is a place that is a living part of its inhabitants and continues to fascinate its visitors. Banjo Patterson, Eileen Mitchell and Jack Riley are just a few of the names who heard the call. Another who had experienced the call of the high country was Malcolm Chisholm. In 2023, it was the Man from Snowy River Bush Festival, together with George Petrou's portrait, that finally brought the story of Malcolm back to a place that was very much a part of him before his life, like so many others, was tragically cut short.